Welcome, everybody. It's been a while, but I am here to deliver the goods and leave a message for our posterity. So, obviously, like on this channel, I kind of just talk through some things that I'm going through and just kind of building in that belief that, one day being able to look back on these videos is going to be important. So, here's the big thing. Had a really big revelation. Okay, so I've been listening to the book Reality Transurfing. Pretty cool. I'm not going to go too much on it, but it's kind of been in line with a lot of the stuff I've been learning about. And it was the latest line in sort of the chain of events that have been leading me up to now. And something that I made a video the other day. It was pretty dire. I didn't put it up because I didn't want anybody to kind of see me in that space, mentally or physically. But I was in a kind of a tough mental space, but I was able to bounce back out of it. But it's very interesting because right now I'm at a place where I realize I've been thinking very small. I've been really focused on my own survival and trying to just make do with what I have, when I realized lately, like, oh, I've been thinking like way smaller than my potential. When I started thinking in terms of like, oh, this is what I really could do, and everything that I wanted with my life, I started really playing with like house money, so to speak, mentally and spiritually. This whole world started opening up. And so I realized I've been definitely playing small. And it's funny because I went out to the beach and I, was thinking forever after class, and I was gonna come back and do some meditation or whatever, but I was just kind of just letting my mind wander. And I've been very impressed of how optimistic I'm able to stay, considering a lot of the pressures I feel. But I realized in there's a version of me that continues to move and march forward, beyond those pressures. When those pressures are alleviated, I don't see myself necessarily stepping back. I see myself stepping forward even more so. And when I started thinking about what that step forward would look like, this whole land of possibility started to open up. And I realized I don't want the next 10 years of my life to look like the last 10 years of my life. Because I've been playing small. I've been playing not to lose. And I realized that that was one of the biggest changes and shifts that I've had this year, is that I've really wanted to like step out of my comfort zone. And I realized like it's difficult for me to find my sort of outside of my comfort zone, because things that are sort of or normal every day, or that might be difficult, seem pretty easily for me. But even now, like I realize like I'm opening myself up here. This is hard for me, but I realized I do this because there's a part of me that's like, oh, like when I make this video, no one's really gonna watch, right? But I realized I'm like, wait, could I do this if like lots of people are watching? And I'd always told myself that I was someone who didn't necessarily look for validation, but I noticed myself during class today that there was one particular person in the class. When I made a joke or I made a comment, I kept looking over at them, looking for approval. And she was a bit of an older woman, and I think it was like there was this sense of like sort of like maternal approval that I was looking for. And obviously I gotta shut that down. But it was really just, I noticed that in myself, and I was like, oh man, like there's this part of me that still cares like what people think, even though I like to tell myself I don't care. And that's tough, and I think after that I stepped back and I realized like I'd had all these dreams and things that I'm working and thinking on, like manifesting, blah, blah, blah. But I started realizing like, oh, like I'm focused on these goals or whatever, but it's really because like there's this other goal I want. And instead of like writing things to hope to get to your goal, I realized I gotta go straight for my goal. And I realized, I watched the movie Strange Magic yesterday, and I realized like, oh yeah, like I want to like find my one true love. Now I realize like I don't necessarily, it doesn't mean I'm necessarily turning down other relationships or whatever, but I realized one of the reasons why I think I've had such a hard time making relationships is rather than allowing myself to move through or have different relationships and be more open, I've been sort of like all or nothing, but without really knowing it. Versus now I realize like, okay, I can set the intention to, find my one true love or whatever, but then just kind of surrender to what's in front of me and be honest about what's in front of me and speak about how I feel, but ultimately just kind of surrender, because that's the new direction I'm taking in my life. Just deciding that I'm going to surrender to whatever life is going to throw at me, because I think at this point in my life, especially when I think of the Onion Yabor Raising Project and what it symbolizes and everything I'm trying to do, I realize for it to really have the power that it needs to, it's got to be beyond me, Even though it's the Onion Yabor Raising Project, it's got my name. It's really about letting a higher power take over. And so I've had a lot of will, I've had a lot of fight. I've tried really hard to direct my path in so many ways, and I've learned a lot of skills. I've been able to grow and develop a lot of character with all that, but ultimately I haven't fulfilled what I've wanted to, and I think it's because I haven't surrendered like I needed to. And that's hard for me to say, because I don't necessarily look at my life as a failure. I think it's just more knowing that the next 10 years don't need to look like the last 10. Not that there's anything wrong with the last 10, but I think just being honest with myself, it didn't necessarily feel unnecessary, but I'm definitely at a place where when I look at the last 10 years of my life and where I was at with my writing and everything like that, there's definitely this sense of like apprehension. And I noticed when I let go and stop trying to do things, and energy and the desire, the motivation kind of comes. And as I've been focusing more internally and doing that focused work, doing the meditation, doing the things that I need to, it comes up. And I know like on this channel, there's probably going to be like 200 videos before anybody really looks at it, you know what I mean? And there's a sense of feeling like I'm talking into the void, but I realize more and more like I've got to be okay with that. I might not be the only one doing it, But how much more would the message mean if people can see like, man, he was doing all of this beforehand, Because I do believe in my dreams. I do believe in the life that I desire to live, and I just believe I can start living it now. And ignoring the elements that aren't there and building on the elements that are and embracing them, that's what's going to build things. And then just allowing the universe to support me, and come and work miracles in my life. And there's a part of me that's definitely like, man, like I'm going to need a miracle, right? Because I recognize that to fulfill the full scope of everything I want to do, it's going to take more than just me willing it so. Because if it was that the case, the last 10 years would have looked different, But they don't. They look like what they do. And I've learned enough to recognize that I need to let go and I need to surrender a little bit. And we'll see how that plays out, But I recognize that even though I have will and I'm exacting that will on myself, I'm not necessarily putting that out in the world. I was always trying to force the world to do things in accordance to my will. But now I'm just kind of like, what happens, happens. And it's at the point where it's like, there might be fear of like, oh, what if I'm homeless? What if this all falls apart? What if I don't have anyone to help me? And I'm now just kind of being okay with it, Because like, if what happens, happens, I gotta be okay with it and trust that it's going to lead me to that path that I see, that desire, and build that sense of accomplishment and heal, whatever giant hole that's in my ego. Because I definitely realize like my ego now has been getting in the way with my mind and my heart. And it's because my ego is trying to prove something. My ego wants to see something come out of life because there's this sense of, there's just something my ego wants to prove, or feels a sense of, like, I want to see, I want to see that miracle. I want to see something, like, I guess it's like I want to see myself apply something and how it actually work. And then not only that, but have it be in line with what my heart feels. Because I can tell you distinctly, like back in 2020, like I stepped away from my heart when I remember I felt the need to just keep working on my fiction and writing and doing that. But instead I went in the direction of my business because I felt that was more practical. And now being at this point, I realize I have to make the same decision again. But I've already made it. I've already decided, I'm just going to trust that the universe will allow my heart to speak and tell the stories I need to. And then let those stories ride out. And that's been tough, man. And I feel like I'm talking and nobody's listening, like nobody's here. Nobody's going to be able to see it. But I know that one day, people will have to look back on these. If I succeed at the level I do, that I see myself doing, people will have to look back at these and see something. And I have to trust that vision now, which is tough, because I have this whole, I see it in my mind, the scavenger hunt, the Easter eggs, the fun, I see it all, elements of it. There's lots I don't see, but there's lots I do. And I realize there's a part of me that's kind of, how do I get the ball rolling? How do I get this giant thing that I want off the ground? And I realize I can't. It's like only God can help me do that. But I realize the only way it'll work is if I let God take care of it. And I've just got to trust that God, and like God within me, God within you, God within everybody, will move it in the right direction. That's tough, man. It's really tough because there's a part of me that just wants to feel satisfied in knowing I did it, but I'm at this point where I realize I can't do it. But I know that it can be done. And so in order to do that, I have to give it up to a higher power. And so I kind of just, today I was looking at my life, I was walking across the beach, and I was like, God, I'm just going to give it up to you, man. Because I realized, like, I don't really know how to run my life. Not the way I see it, not the vision I have. And that my ego will never be satisfied. Because what I want to do will always be outside of it. And it's just, it's too big. I do think my ego can be satisfied, but it's not going to be satisfied how I think it'll be satisfied. And now I'm just kind of giving it up to the universe, God, just being like, okay, I'm going to let you do your magic, and just completely surrender. Just meditate, show up, be where I need to show up, follow through on my commitments. Yeah. And I realize there's a part of me that still feels like an obligation to include or create plans for people that I don't know where that comes from. And I think it's my heart and my brain are in conflict, so they need to get together. But I met some cool people today because I opened my mouth, saw a cute girl, and ended up talking to her friends, and they were all way cool, way cool. All the guys are actually the people I ended up being really like, oh man, these are cool guys. So it was nice to be able to feel that. So I'm working through it, Just making this video because I felt like I needed to get in the habit again. Just keep up the videos. And I don't know how it's all gonna come together. I trust that it will. But I'm realizing I don't know how, and I'm okay with that. Don't know, don't care. And being okay with that, just gonna keep learning what I need to learn, keep focusing on what I need to focus on, and allow my brain to be the brain, the emotion, the information sucking mechanism that it is. And just turn the brain off. Just let myself be the best I can be. So we'll see how that turns out. Maybe a year from now, nothing changes. Maybe a year from now, everything changes. Should be really dope. I'm in need for a big win, man. I've had some big wins recently, but I don't know, I'm like something life changing, something status quo changing. Like my status quo has been the same. It's been this struggle bus for so long. Finding new ways to struggle, but the status quo's got to change. I've got to switch up to the status quo. So those are my thoughts for today. I'm gonna kill the video, send it over. Maybe 1 person, 0 people will watch it, but it's what it is. Status quo needs to change, and it's starting now. So hope all you're doing well. Peace.